Show.
Welcome to the Bobby O Show. My name is Bob Opotzer, and I have a very special edition of my show today. I'll be doing two shows this week, one today and one tomorrow. And the reason I'm doing today's show is because I have a very special guest who's in the United States now, and I will tell you how we got to having this show organized. My guest is Veronica Reich. She is a lawyer I've known for years and years and years, and maybe take one of those years out. I've known her for years and years. And she's Jewish, and she was born in a foreign country, Hungary, and she'll tell you her story in a little bit. But now she's moved to Israel. And with the problems going on in Israel with Iran, I was trying to reach out to her to see how she was doing, to make sure she was safe, see what's going on. And I couldn't reach her. She wasn't returning my phone calls, or couldn't return my phone calls, or was ignoring me. I'm not sure which of those three things it was. So I was at a law dinner recently, and her partner Marissa was there, and I said, gee, have you heard from Veronica? How's she doing? Oh, she's fine. She's in the United States right now. So after getting over the fact that Veronica didn't call me, I called up Veronica and said, Veronica, would you like to talk to us a little bit about what's it like in Israel now? And can you do a show? And she said that she was planning to go back to Israel this past Monday, but couldn't get a flight. I said, great. I will give you a special time today for a show, which is she's here today. So we have Veronica Reich, who's going to talk to us about her perspective. This is her perspective on the war in Israel with Iran and the United States involved, et cetera, et cetera. So let's, with that long-winded introduction, Veronica Reich, welcome to the board.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would never ignore your calls.
Okay.
Never.
I want that on tape.
I just didn't get the message. I don't know how or why.
Okay,
but I'm glad
you.
we made contact
Okay.
because I really enjoy doing this. I enjoy seeing you, and I enjoy the opportunity to be able to express my feelings about this incredibly important topic.
And this year on Yom Kippur, Jews on Yom Kippur atone for their sins to the person they sinned with. And so I will take this as a preemptive atonement for your sin.
Good.
Veronica,
Good.
even though people have seen you several times on my show, just give us a background about where you're from originally, because I think your background is very important to understand why you have such fervent perspectives about Israel.
Thank you. I was actually born in Budapest, Hungary, in Eastern Europe. Both my parents were Holocaust survivors. My mother was an Auschwitz survivor, and she passed away about 10 years ago. My father had a valuable wartime skill, so he was in a slave labor camp most of the war, and I had other relatives who survived somehow in the ghettos. I had many relatives that just disappeared into ash and just never came back. In 1956, when I was only 1 year old, the Hungarian Revolution broke out. They were trying to revolt against the communist regime. The USSR controlled Hungary, and they started to try to throw over the communist government. At that time, the borders became relatively porous because many soldiers were called into the city to fight. And my parents, who decided, well, maybe it's time to go now, after Auschwitz, after communism, they weren't able to live freely as Jews. And they decided from literally one moment to the next to leave Hungary. And they packed me up, a 1-year-old baby, and put something in my bottle so I wouldn't cry, because a crying baby will get you shot by the border guards. And they managed to get to the train station and then get to near no man's land, which is miles wide between a communist and a non-communist country. And they got people to lead them across and got into a refugee camp in Austria. And because we had some relatives that got out either before World War II or immediately after, we had people who were able to, as they say, sign for us, agree to help us out and take care of us so we wouldn't become a burden on the country. although becoming a burden on the country was the last thing in the world my parents ever imagined. They couldn't. My father started to work right away. He worked as a night watchman, he worked as a laborer, and built themselves up over time to a relatively prosperous business owner. We had a very comfortable life. We certainly had everything we needed and most of what we wanted. They sent me to college and to law school and paid for it, and got me to where I am today. They were really remarkable people. That was an act of courage that is unparalleled in my experience, in my knowledge, to get up from one minute to the next. Imagine being 48 years old, which is how old my father was, and saying, okay, we gotta go, and put stuff in one carry-on bag and leave your entire life behind. It's very courageous.
It's amazing. And so your mother, when you said she survived Auschwitz,
yes,
she actually survived it. You said she died 10 years ago, but I think what you meant was she survived Auschwitz and then came to the United States.
Correct, in 1956.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, that perspective.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, the last time you were here, before we do that, you also have since bought a home in Israel and live in it.
Yes.
Why don't you talk about that piece of your puzzle as well?
Yes, it was always a dream of mine ever since I was, probably before, but when I was 38 years old and made my first trip to Israel, my late husband used to say that I got a bad case of Jerusalem syndrome. I immediately fell in love, and I immediately...
With Israel?
With Israel.
I mean, you're already in love with
my
him.
My husband I already was good with.
All right, it's okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And a very, very clear realization came to me that I arrived home, to the home of my soul, the home of my heart, the home of my people. I had no such connection to Eastern Europe, to Hungary, but I did have a very strong connection to the Jewish homeland. And it was always a dream of mine, and then we got to the point where my husband was retired and was begging me to retire. And we did this really interesting Israeli thing. They call it buying on paper. So they're building an apartment building, and when we bought it, it was just a hole in the ground. And you pay as you go along instead of getting a mortgage and paying all at once when you buy something.
So you buy it and you're paying money, and then when it's built, you pay for the full price.
You finish paying, and you know, all the bureaucracy in Israel too. You have to get permits, and they have to do inspections, just like here.
But you finally bought the place in Israel.
We bought it in Israel, and I am so happy there, which is hard sometimes for people to understand for two important reasons. Number one, and this is very painful for me, my family is here. I have 2 children and 3 grandchildren, and they're all in the United States.
What do they call you, the grandkids? What do they call you?
Savta.
Savta. And what is Savta?
Grandmother in Hebrew.
Very good, thank you.
When my first grandson was born, and he was the first grandchild on both sides, we each got to pick our names. And I picked Savta, and I had no competition.
Do you know what my grandkids, well, the 4-year-old can speak, the 13-month-old doesn't speak yet.
Yeah.
Do you know my 4-year-old talks, what he calls me?
Bob.
Bob.
I think that's great.
That's great.
It's easy.
So you bought a home in Israel.
Yes.
And you also own a home in the United States.
I do. Okay.
And your dual citizenship?
I do have dual citizenship.
Israel and the United States.
That's correct.
And so you came back about 3-4 weeks ago. When did you come back to visit?
Oh, I came back to the United States
you're here
from Israel in mid-January.
Oh, you've been here since January, okay.
Yeah, and I had a ticket to go home March 8th, this past Sunday.
And what happened?
The war broke out on March 6th, and my flight and almost all the others were canceled. Pardon me, I'm fighting a bit of a cold, so if I sound a little raspy, that's why.
Interesting you call it a war because our president says it's not a war, but that's okay. I want to get into that topic with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
I think it is a war. But in any event, so you couldn't go back to Israel is your point.
I can't.
And because there's no flights back from El Al?
There's no, I always fly El Al because if any airline flies, it'll be El Al. They also have the best security. They also have defensive weapons. So
How's the food?
excellent.
I knew you were going to tell
It's very good.
So
But
you couldn't fly.
I can't. I still can't. I check every day.
Would you fly back tomorrow if you get a flight tomorrow?
No, but only because
Let me guess. Your grandkids and your children.
that's it. I mean, I got some really strong pushback this time. They were never happy that I was there. I was in Israel on October 7th, 2.5 years ago. I was in Israel during the first Iran war, and experienced lots of silence, lots of trouble, but they really came down hard on me this time.
I think someone else in this studio right here also gave you a hard time when I heard you were trying to go back.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
But if it wasn't for the pushback, and if I could get a flight, the fact that there's a war going on and even munitions are falling on Jerusalem, I would go back. I know that sounds crazy, but I would go back.
No, well, I may disagree with your perspective, but I wouldn't call it crazy.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it crazy. I want to ask you a few questions about contact you've had with your friends in Israel, but I want to do something different. The last time you were here, you gave us a very good explanation as to the parliamentary procedures in Israel, and people who watched the show had commented to me, so it was very helpful. I think it might be useful to have you, and you brought some maps with you today, to go through those maps first, to talk about the lay of the land of Israel, because a lot of folks, I don't even know what you know. Okay, so
Sure.
I'm going to go now to the 1947 partition map, which is labeled number 8 to my directors.
Where will we see it here?
You can see it right there.
Okay. This was the United Nations partition plan. When Great Britain, who had the mandate for Palestine, because there was no other name for it then.
What was the name then? What was the name before?
Well, it was Judea and Samaria, and the biblical names or Arab names. There was no country, and there never has been,
and just so you know,
called Palestine.
just so you know, as a Jew, a lot of questions I'm asking you, I know the answers to, but so it's not like how come Bob doesn't know? My audience may not know the answer to.
And I'm very happy to explain as much as I can.
Good.
That's great.
The map
yeah,
is
good.
over here.
There
now.
it is.
So this is the map that the UN.
This was the UN plan to divide, have a two-state solution. The British had said we're leaving. We're out of here. They had enough. The Arabs were fighting the British, and the Jews were fighting the British. And after World War II, they had enough. So they threw it to the UN, and the UN came up with a plan. And don't forget, there were millions of refugees at this point.
Jewish refugees?
Jewish refugees from Europe.
From the Holocaust.
Yeah, from the Holocaust, yeah.
So the yellow is the Arab state.
The yellow is the Arab state, and the orange was the Jewish state. Now,
In the partition plan.
in the UN partition plan,
Okay.
and what was the result of the UN partition plan? They voted on it, and the UN passed it.
Okay.
And Israel said, we haven't had a country in 2,000 years.
Hallelujah.
Yay, we'll take it. And the Arabs said, we're going to destroy Israel, and 5 nations went to war. That's what happened.
Immediately after the plan.
Immediately after the plan was announced.
Okay. So is that it for this map?
That's, yes, I think so. But I do want to point out, the orange down at the bottom is mostly desert. It's not arable land.
At that time.
Well, it's getting better, yes, but it's still the Negev desert.
Sure, but I'm saying at that point in time.
Yeah. And then you'll notice that Jerusalem is in a little independent, sort of a multi-nation little carve-out. And there is no way that Jews could get to Jerusalem without therefore going through the state that was supposed to be there, Palestine. And there is far, far more arable and good land that was designated part of the Arab state than is part of the Jewish state.
I was going to say, looking at this map, if most of the orange is, a lot of the orange is desert, there's
On the bottom.
on the bottom
it's
part,
desert,
right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, you look at the map saying, the Arab states got more of the, quote, arable land, as you said.
Absolutely.
And when it says there, Jerusalem, paren, UN administration,
Yeah.
close paren, that was going to be the plan going forward after the
Yes.
approval.
Yes, it was going to be a multinational thing, just like any other UN NGO is right now.
Okay. Are we done with this map?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so the next map would be the 1949 map,
Correct.
which would be map number 5 for my directors. (1949) map is coming. Okay, now, what does it mean by UN armistice lines? Tell me how we got from the 47 map to the 49 map.
Because, as I said, upon the designation of the first two-state solution there, the response of the Jewish yeshuv, which is the settlement, which was sort of the government in formation, said, hey, wonderful. And the Arab response was to start a war. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, they all declared war on the new Jewish state. And there was war for 2 years. Excuse me. And then there was an armistice. And
what does an armistice mean?
It means peace. I mean, stop the war.
And who imposed the armistice? Was that?
Well, it was pretty much agreed to, but it was, again, a UN creation.
David Ben-Gurion involved in this whole process?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And what was his role?
He was the first prime minister of the state of Israel, and he was the leader of the Jewish yeshuv, the settlement, before Israel became an independent state, before the 47 partition plan, before the 48 Declaration of Independence.
So he was a general in the military?
I think so, but he was already older.
He was already older.
So there were lots of other very well-known generals like Moshe Dayan.
Moshe Dayan, okay. So how does, roughly, is this better land for Israel? Or what was
It is better land, although the traditional homeland of the Jewish people, biblically and beyond, is that white area. But Jerusalem is just inside the part that is Israel, and but Jerusalem was divided, just like Berlin was divided, and there was nothing going on between the two. The Jordanians controlled their part of it.
Would that be the northern part?
Of Jerusalem, more the eastern part.
Eastern part, okay.
Eastern part. And the Jews had the western part of Jerusalem.
And was that because the Jews had won, Israel had won the war, so to speak?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, there were a lot of casualties and a lot of battles. It was very bloody.
And by the way, we're talking about 1947, 1949. The battles between the Jews and the Arabs, a couple thousand years? How many years did it go back?
I would say 4,000.
Okay, so give or 2,000, give or take. Okay.
If you look at the origins of the dispute, we go down to Isaac and Esau.
And I mentioned that because as we get to now, to think that we're going to resolve, if you think you're going to resolve this dispute of 4,000, 2,000, a number of years it's going to be, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I think is dreaming.
Well, yes, I would agree with that, but I probably have a dispute with you over what the next 2 or 3 weeks means, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
So that is what was controlled by Israel, the darker part, when the War of Independence.
When you say dark, you mean with not the white part, but
not the white part,
not the white,
what is a little
it may be hard to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's go to the next map.
Yep.
Okay, and you're going to tie all this up as to why you brought these maps in a few moments.
Sure.
Next map is the 1967 map.
Correct.
Old number 2 for my directors.
3. Oh, no, sorry. Yes, you're right.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Now that's got pink.
Yes.
What is the pink in case they can't read? What's the pink say in the little block?
The pink is what Israel now controlled after the 6-day war. You'll see they controlled all of Sinai, they controlled all of Gaza, and Judea and Samaria, which is now called the West Bank.
Who started the 6-day war?
Well, the first shots were fired by Israel in response to absolutely credible, clear threats.
So Israel.
It was a defensive war. It was characterized as a defensive war, and it absolutely was.
So if I understand it correctly, the Israeli organization that does all the investigation,
The military and everything
they had good information that indicated that there was going to be some bad action by the Arab countries.
Yes.
Any particular countries involved, or just?
It's pretty much together, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. They work together for the most part.
So Israeli organization found out about this information and decided to throw the first shot. That's what
They
it was?
had to, absolutely.
Okay.
Question of survival.
Okay. And so this map was before the war or at the day of the war?
After the war.
Afterward.
Day after the war.
Okay. And did Israel win that war also?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And that gave them more land.
It gave them more land, but you can't just say that without giving, see that biggest pink part, which is the Sinai Desert,
Yes.
Sinai Peninsula.
What about that?
That was returned to Egypt. The Israelis gave the entire Sinai back.
Did the Egyptians want that?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had Sharm el-Sheikh down there in the south, and the Suez Canal is all the way on the west. But historically, it's probably the only, or certainly one of the very few times that land has been returned in a defensive war. Israel was defending itself, and yet they returned the land that they conquered, that they won over. The Egyptian army fled, literally.
So your viewpoint is that Israel was magnanimous, and I think that's a normal position, that they gave back land that they'd won.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure I would call it magnanimous. I think it was brave and just, you know.
We can have wordsmithing. Okay, anything more with this map?
Gaza, as you could see, is in pink also, but that was at the end of 1967. The entire Gaza Strip, which, by the way, is about 20 miles long and about 7 or 8 miles wide at its widest point. We have counties that are much larger than that. But it's got such a disproportionate amount of the world's news, which is something we can go into later.
So by analogy, roughly from Danbury to Southbury on I-84 is about 20 miles, 15, 20 miles.
Okay.
So that's roughly, we're talking about that kind of...
That's the size of Gaza. Okay. Israel itself, all of Israel, the blue, is about the size of New Jersey.
Although the Gaza is on the Mediterranean Sea.
Gaza is on the Mediterranean, correct.
Okay, last map I think is coming up.
And,
more? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, one more thing, sorry. The pink in the middle where Jerusalem is, that is still disputed territory. It's divided into area A, B, and C.
What's the disputed area?
See where Jerusalem is?
Yes.
That entire pink part. That's Judea and Samaria, and what Jordan renamed the West Bank, because it's the West Bank of the Jordan River. And there are many Arab villages there, and there are parts that are controlled by the Palestinian Authority, and parts that are controlled by the Israeli military, and a number of Israeli cities and towns.
It's a large part of disputes between the countries.
A huge
part of disputes. Okay, the last map we're going to have, and we're going to tie this all in, is the map which is number 1, geography of Israel.
Correct.
As of when is this map roughly?
This is recent.
So it's 2020?
Yeah. I mean, look, Judea and Samaria are still in the brown, see with the dotted lines around it.
Yep.
So it's still in dispute. All of Gaza is outlined with the dotted line. That's still in dispute. The Golan Heights, all the way in the north of Israel on the east side, I don't think that's in dispute anymore, but Syria would disagree with me.
Okay.
And that's a pretty accurate representation of the boundaries and the areas of dispute currently.
So now let's go back. Why do you think showing those 3 maps, the fourth one current, why do you think that's relevant to our conversation about today's war?
Well, today's war, the war with Iran, is an outgrowth of the Israeli resolve to have peace. They're not anti-peace, they're just anti-suicide. And they have to defend themselves. And Iran has been the greatest state sponsor of terror around the world for decades.
Since at least 1979. at least.
Yes, at
That'd be-
least
that'd be-
since
yeah.
1979.
That's the
correct.
common parlance.
Yes, yes.
And I think
yes.
no one would dispute, no reasonable person would dispute that Iran is one of the most evil, most difficult countries to deal with and is a threat to Israel and perhaps the U.S. I don't think anyone disputes
Okay.
that. Any reasonable person I don't think would dispute that.
All right, you'd be surprised.
I said reasonable person.
Yeah, I know. Well, reasonable is also a definition. But anyway, you're right. That is a good
I
summation.
got 3 times today. I was
I
right.
know, I
Okay,
know.
I
You're
better
counting.
quit while I'm
You're
we should end the show
counting.
right now. Okay, so now tell us.
Okay.
So why did you mesh all
Because
the maps?
when that partition plan was promulgated by the UN, we agreed there would have been 2 states. It was fine.
The 2-state solution, so to speak.
Well,
2 states.
well, now I think it's a delusion, not a solution.
Okay.
But we'll get to
and
that.
I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah. My point really is that the Israelis never wanted any of these wars. Every single war, every single terrible time period, like the Intifadas, that Israel has had to survive, have not been started by Israel. They have not. And I just find it so difficult to understand why Israel is now seen as the aggressor so much. And in every fight to just survive, anti-Semitism has grown, anti-Zionism has grown, the Palestinian narrative has been overtaken. It's very hard for me to understand because these maps show that Israel wanted peace from day one, right after World War II, when we were recovering from the worst tragedy to befall the Jews in modern times. We just wanted a refuge, a place of our own, like every other nation has. And then I will tell you I have a dispute with the word Zionism, because Zionism is really defined.
I was going to ask you, but can we have, by the way,
Okay,
can we have map number 10, or not map 10, I'm sorry, slide number 10? Okay.
What did we
That
name
would
it?
that would be anti-Zionist.
Anti-Zionist poster.
The anti-Zionist poster. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you
Yeah.
brought this poster. It
I
says
did.
if you see a Zionist, call the anti-terror hotline. Zionists not welcome.
Yeah.
First of all, define for the audience what is Zionism.
Zionism is simply the movement to create the Jewish homeland where it has historically been, and to have a homeland for the Jewish people who have been tossed and turned and persecuted and thrown out of every country they've ever been in so far, save the United States.
So far.
Yeah. And it's just the establishment of a homeland for the Jewish people in what is biblically and historically the Jewish homeland. There was a country of Israel thousands of years ago.
Now, was this an actual picture, or is this like a cartoon or something?
Oh no, absolutely not. In a major city, I don't recall which one.
In Israel?
No,
where?
outside of Israel.
Okay.
It's in English.
Well, I mean, it could have been put up by
Yeah.
the Arab nation. So, but this is an actual sign that's going on.
Absolutely. And there are signs like that all over Europe and in many parts of even the United States.
Let's go back to October 7, 2023. Take me from there to the start of the war I'm going to say 2 weeks ago.
It's 11 days, but we won't quibble.
Okay. And Lord knows that you would never quibble.
No. But
I think in the Bible, one day might have been centuries.
it could have been, or
Could have been-
millennia. We don't know.
okay.
But we're living
Okay.
in today.
Okay, so give us,
Okay.
get us up to the day before the war.
I was in Israel on October 7th, and it was not only the Sabbath, it was a Jewish holiday. So we were kind of, or my milieu, my community, we weren't on TV or radio or the internet or our phones or computers, nothing like that. On October 6th, there was a ceasefire in Gaza. And on October 6th, people must understand there was not a Jew, not an Israeli, not a Zionist in all of Gaza. Israel had left Gaza, that little strip of land that I showed you when I said they gave Sinai back to Egypt.
Yes.
They decided, we're not going to hold on to this place. It's got hundreds of thousands, I think perhaps 2 million Palestinians.
In that strip.
In that tiny strip, yes, it's very heavily populated. We're not going to risk our army to maintain the few Jewish settlements that existed there. And those few Jewish settlements, which came after 1967 at the behest of the Israeli government, were ripped up and out and relocated to the rest of Israel. They dug up graves. No Jewish graves were even there. They left behind infrastructure, roads, buildings, greenhouses. There was a very thriving business of greenhouses. Left them all behind. And if they wanted a state, if the Palestinians that lived there wanted a state, we were giving it to them on a silver platter. Plus the billions of dollars that they've received in aid from all over the world. And instead of building more infrastructure, building schools or mosques or hospitals, anything, businesses, they built terror tunnels. And the entire economy was shifted to aggressive, terrorist-inspired behaviors. And that's what was there. I mean, you know, they had some cities and towns, and they even had a mall, and but the economy and the political leadership was entirely focused on building up a terror network to eliminate, not make peace with, to eliminate the state of Israel.
And what does the Hamas constitution say?
Oh, destroy it. Just destroy Israel, kill every Jew. Yeah.
Actually, I call it, it's not really a constitution.
It's their charter.
Charter, thank you. Okay, so now that gets us to October 7th. And what happens from October 7th to the day before, 11 days ago?
The Arabs, Palestinians, Gazans, attacked Israel, and they knew it was a Sabbath and they knew it was a holiday. Lots of soldiers were in synagogues. There's a very good system throughout Israel. Sirens, soldiers are required to keep cell phones with them. And there were people that were in the middle of prayer, literally in the middle of prayer, even leading prayers, got up, left, grabbed their uniforms and their weapons, and went to their units. Israel was attacked from the air, not planes, but there were balloons and incendiary devices. On the ground, so many just poured across the border, not even in Gaza, across the border in Greater Israel, and just raped and pillaged and killed and destroyed indiscriminately. You've heard of the Nova Music Festival. Because it was a holiday, which is a day off for all Israelis. If you're not religious, then you have a day off. And young people were having a huge music festival.
This is October 6th, October 7th.
October 7th.
Okay, but get me to the, because we went through this the last show.
Okay.
Get me to the day before the war started. What was, and again, this is your perspective, this is your opinion.
Yes.
It's not Comcast's opinion, it's not necessarily my opinion, it's
Right.
your opinion.
Okay.
So October 7th, I'm sorry, correction. So 11 days ago, a war breaks out.
War breaks out.
What happened the day before the war, from your perspective, that led to the war breaking out on that particular day?
You can't really say the day before the war because everything for decades has led up to that point. Netanyahu, whatever you think of him, has been screaming about Iran for decades, ever since he became prime minister. He was even before the UN and the bomb charts and all that. But he was saying there are a clever, intelligent people, they're well educated, and they are building a bomb. And they are not shy about it. They said it is our goal to have a nuclear weapon. It is also our goal to wipe out the state of Israel. It is also our goal to wipe out much of the rest of the world and establish a caliphate.
What's a caliphate?
caliphate is a government that is run by Islam, by the religion of Islam, and they impose Sharia law. And the mullahs are in charge of everything, much like was in Afghanistan until 11 days ago.
And by the way, when you said, despite what I think of Netanyahu,
Yeah.
I'll state that I have no respect for Netanyahu.
I know.
I think Netanyahu, we know this from conversations, I think Netanyahu has been a detriment to Israel for his political activities, corruption, that type of stuff. And I think he's hurt Israel. And so let's get that on the table. I think I'm a devout supporter of Israel, but not Netanyahu. I think he's caused a lot of the anti-Semitism, or he's been gas in the fire, shall we say. And so we'll talk about that. So that's what, when you said, despite what you think about Netanyahu,
Yes.
that's my perspective.
I understand
So now
your
I'm
perspective.
asking you again, so going back to history, one problem that Americans have, Jewish Americans have, many Jewish Americans have, is what happened the day before, 11 days ago. Is there a date on that? February, what date do you refer to as 11 days ago?
I don't.
Well,
Look at a calendar.
Well, today's March 11th.
11, so it was March 1.
Okay,
Yeah.
March 1, thank you. Okay, well, you were being precise, I'm being precise. So what was it that happened on February 28th, March 1, that you think was a good reason for, and I'm not asking you to, I'm not criticizing you, I'm just asking, why do you, as a devout American and Jew and Israeli, think that it was appropriate for the war that began on that date of March 1st, your perspective?
Because it was absolutely necessary. And because the United States and Israel, not necessarily looking to the leadership, over which there was a great deal of controversy, have been the strongest allies. And Israel did look to the United States for support, and the U.S. gave it to them. And it was an opportunity that had to be seized.
What was the opportunity?
Because Iran was at its weakest point, I think, since 1979. The rial, their money, was ridiculously devalued. Inflation was rampant. They had water problems. There wasn't enough water in the country, and the infrastructure wasn't serving them, and people were really suffering because of it. There was a government that was imposing, again, Sharia law. Women were arrested, and I'm not exaggerating, for wearing makeup out on the street, for showing a few strands of hair.
Where?
In Iran.
Why do we care? Why does Israel care? I care about women being treated the way you just described. Why should Israel care about how the women are being treated in terms of wearing makeup?
Well,
because I'm asking, and I'm not being critical of you.
I know,
I'm not being critical.
I know.
The question is, from my perspective,
what is our interest? Those about women wearing makeup or being imprisoned because their hair is showing, which is true, is only
I know it's true.
Only an example of what Sharia law does, and it does to women. What impacts a lot more is what Iran has demanded that they do and has insisted that they will do, is develop a nuclear weapon.
Okay, that's a different point. But,
Of course it is.
I want to clarify.
But we talk about values also.
Hold it. Well, wait a second. Because we're talking about the United States involvement.
Yeah.
First of all, you know that I'm a big and total advocate of women's rights. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I want to make sure that's not an incorrect assumption.
No.
However, we're talking about 8 Americans who have died already, okay, and more to come, I'm sure, if we continue this activity. And I'm trying to understand what happened that caused this need to have the war now. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay.
And I think the point you made about how Iran is at a weak point is a significant point.
It's very important.
Okay, but you talked about the fact that in the 1967 war, when, and the map you showed, Israel did the first shot because there was intelligence that said Israel is going to be attacked then. What intelligence that we know of, and that's the problem. We don't, see, here's the problem.
I got it.
Because our president has had 18 different, whatever the number is, many, many different reasons why he said we should attack and be part of this war, although he wouldn't call it a war, he said he has a feeling. He had different things. We have different goals and objectives.
I know.
But when you did 67, you mentioned that there were issues that Israel had information about an attack. Did Israel, to your knowledge, and maybe we don't know now, have information about an attack coming at that point in time? I'm just trying to understand. I'm not advocating or criticizing.
They were closer than ever to a nuclear weapon. Their creation of ICBMs, which is an intercontinental ballistic missile, had grown exponentially. Now, you know, a missile will have a warhead at the end of it, which is a bomb, and it flies through the air and lands sort of where they want it to land.
You know, it's ironic, back when I was a poli-sci major at Yale, we studied about ICBMs in 1975.
Okay.
And
well,
and it was word that those ICBM could attack from Cuba and all that kind of thing. So,
okay.
So tell us.
We've come a long way since 1979. An ICBM is intercontinental ballistic missile. Israel and Iran are on the same continent.
Oh,
they
terrible.
don't share a border, but they're quite close to one another. Those missiles that Iran has now are easily able to reach Africa and Europe and much of Asia. And
America?
According to what I hear, they are not yet able to reach America. But what do you think they're going to do if they have a nuclear weapon and they are committed?
Israel's the first one to.
Israel will be the first one.
And this is our ally.
But
right, Israel's our ally.
Yeah, well, very much so. And that's actually an excellent point. I'm glad you brought it up, because you talked about the 8 servicemen that have died. Do you have any idea how many hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans have died because of Iranian terrorism? And
Thousands,
by their proxies. The Khobar Towers, remember that? They killed all the Marines. And I have a list, actually, of incident after incident after event where Iran or Iranian proxies have killed Americans.
No one disputes.
Why don't we believe them when they say they want to destroy us?
I do not dispute what you just said about the Iranians and how we did. In law, there's a thing called a motion to strike, which is you take all well-pleaded allegations and admit they're true. I'm accepting the fact that a base of our discussion is Iran is a terrible, well, not the people aren't terrible.
No, not the people.
It's the leadership of Iran has been a terrible problem. They've killed many, many people. I'm just trying to understand, and let me just tell you my concern. My concern is that our president said he had, quote, a feeling, unquote, okay? Our president has an obligation, if there's going to be a war, to go under the Constitution of the United States of America, Article 1, Section 8, has an obligation to get congressional approval. Now, people say, well, did we do that in the Vietnam War? Did we do that in Iraq? Well, let me finish. So 2 wrongs, 8 wrongs don't make a right. So my concern is, I'd like to know, and we will never know in the near future as to what knowledge was gained that caused the war. We don't know what happened the week or 2 before that people thought would be a serious problem for Israel and the United States. But my concern is we didn't get congressional approval. Now, after the fact, we have gotten there. And now we have other serious issues. And I'm just trying to understand what it is that changed to make it more difficult now. And why didn't, from 1979 to 2025, when Trump was a president 4 years of that period of time, from 16 to 20, we didn't do this kind of thing except for the bombing of the nuclear activities several months ago, which Trump said ruined the nuclear weapons forever. So I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to do it right. Okay, of course it didn't. He was a fool to say that. But the point I'm making is that we as Americans, American Jews, we all have an obligation to protect our Constitution, to protect our allies. And P.S., how come we're not protecting Ukraine so much? But let's go on from there.
Okay, it's a good question, but not one that I can deal with.
No, and not today's. and I just want to hear your thoughts. And again, I'm not being anti-Israel. I'm trying to understand the logic of it. I am anti-Netanyahu. That I'll admit.
I get it.
Are you? Do you support Netanyahu?
I think that Netanyahu, like Trump, is a very divisive figure. I think Netanyahu is a lot more polished than Trump is.
Raise the bar a little higher,
but
please.
that's, I know, that's a very low bar. But I think they've both done some good things, and I think they've both done some unwise, bad things. I am not a big Trump basher. I appreciate what he has done for Israel. He has been a good friend, that's indisputable. But the other things that he has done, I'm an American. I'm not happy with a lot of other things that go on.
I cannot understand, if you're going to go to war, like our present society wanted to do, why we only had our reserves of oil at a 50% level. I don't understand why we wouldn't have had our oil 100% level to be prepared. And my concern is, I don't know what their strategy is. And Colin Powell once said, I don't think he was the originator of this quote, but he once said, you never get into a war until you know what your exit strategy is. And that's what worries the hell out of me.
I know that worries you, because you have mentioned that.
In our private conversations.
A lot of, yes.
It wasn't private, it wasn't confidential. But
no. That's a lot of questions rolled into one.
Just call me Veronica, Reich.
No, first of all, why now? Because the opportunity was there. The United States was willing to help with the air war. The United States has certain bunker buster bombs that Israel does not have and cannot, according to the limited information I have. That needs a certain kind of plane with a certain kind of airfield. And
certain distances, a lot of things.
There's a lot of those things. But the fact that Iran was every day getting closer and closer to a nuclear weapon, the fact that they were continuing, even after the ceasefire in Gaza, to promote murder and killing by their proxies, Syria, Lebanon, all over the Middle East, correct? And how far would you let him go? How close do they have to be to a nuclear weapon before you do something? How do you determine when you're ready? How do you determine that? Because it could be too late. We don't know exactly what's going on in Iran.
You're making an excellent point, and that's why I'm so concerned. And it is true, apparently, that the Gang of Eight, which is the 8 leaders of the Congress, got some notice a couple hours beforehand, whatever. But because the issue is they're getting closer and we have to stop Iran from what they're doing, the problem is, from my perspective, is why wasn't there an analysis with the the House of the Congress to get approval for a war? And maybe they would have thought, for example, of what's the exit strategy going to be, when, and what's our goals and objectives. And also the issue about, now we have this, I just bought gasoline today on the way over here, 60 cents a gallon more. Well, there was no strategy, no plan, and I don't know what the exit strategy is, and I don't trust the current American administration. Do you?
I get it.
Do you trust them?
No. Okay. There's too much back and forth.
Too much chazarai in a negative way.
Yeah, too much. We have decimated their nuclear capabilities. Well, we're going to destroy their nuclear capability. It's very difficult for a reasonable person to understand everything that's going on. But I absolutely believe that there was no choice but to have it happen now for the defense of our ally, Israel, the only democracy in the entire Middle East, the only one, and all of the principles that all the progressive liberals claim to promote: freedom of religion, equality for women, freedom of the press, freedom to assemble.
No dispute
only in Israel, not in any other country.
Here's another question.
So that makes Israel our ally, our shared values and our shared
they may have more
concerns.
values than some of our leadership does. Okay, but here's the thing I want to say to you is that one mistake that has been made in wars in the past is not getting other countries to support us in our endeavor. And I don't mean authoritarian governments. And I don't know whether England, whether France, whether other countries that are differently democratic than we are, but democratic, and they weren't brought on board, and they're not sending troops to support.
Well, I think they are. I think they're starting to.
At the outset, there wasn't, and to me, that's an important thing to talk to allies. But here's the thing: if in fact there was evidence that 3 days from the day from March 4th of 2029, 26 rather, rather, something's going to happen. You may not be able to go to Congress, but because of the methodology that Trump did, as an American, I have a serious problem. I want to ask you this question. We only have 8 minutes left in the show.
Oh, God.
Tell me, that's okay. Tell me, sitting here today on March 11th, if you were king, if you were in charge, what would be your personal goal and objective with respect to what's going on in Iran and Israel and the Mideast right now? What's your goal?
Okay. Well, I would be queen, first of all.
You're so good, you'd be king and queen.
It would be
what would your goal?
a lot along the lines of what Marco Rubio has said. He has told us what some of those goals are. He's been pretty clear about that.
Check your
now,
notes. Go ahead.
Whether or not we're going to be able to achieve them is another issue.
And
but,
whether or not the goal would be the same goal as our president.
Okay, but there are key strategic objectives, and this is from the United States: ballistic missile capabilities. There must be total destruction of Iran's existing missile inventory, their launch systems, and the factories used to produce them. Their naval assets, because their naval assets will, and I think they already have to some extent, mined the Straits of Hormuz, which will have a huge impact on American and worldwide shipping and trade. A lot of it, including a lot of oil exports, go through there. They have to neutralize the Iranian Navy to secure global shipping and reduce the regional threats. Because if you could put one of these launchers on a ship, it'll go even further. And nuclear non-proliferation. A core long-term requirement that Iran must never be permitted to possess a nuclear weapon. Those are 3 clear strategic objectives. Now, I'm not into the Israeli leadership. I don't have an ear there, but I think that's Israel's strategic objective. I'm really pretty sure it is.
Should Israel and America have the same objective?
Yes, with certain different emphasis. You know, I mean,
I want to ask you a couple.
They're across the world from each other. But those are clear strategic objectives. Okay, so those are articulated by the Americans.
Well, no. Articulated by Marco Rubio, not our, no, let's be honest. The president has given many, many different perspectives. In fact, one was unconditional surrender. Okay, please, okay. Don't give me the.
No,
okay, but
we've agreed that Trump often says things that are contradictory and inaccurate.
He lies.
Okay, he lies.
Okay, but here's what I want to ask you. On the ICBM issues, one concern I have is when he says total destruction of ICBMs, how are we going to know that all the ICBMs, which are catastrophic to have in a country like Iran, are destroyed? Because if we're not going to have boots on the ground, who knows in what tunnels are in Iran or what hidden location the ICBMs. So to say that all of them have to be destroyed, I'm not sure how let me finish. I've let you tell me finish that. So I'm not sure how we know about that. Number 2, the naval activities. Yeah, the Iranians have apparently, from what I hear and read and whatever, and I don't know the facts because we're only being told what we're told, that Iranians have mined the critical
shipping lanes,
right.
The Straits of Hormuz.
But apparently, as I heard today, I don't know if it's true or not, all of the Americans, or 3 of the most important American ships that are minesweepers, are headed to Philadelphia or headed somewhere to be destroyed, and it's not going to be, so how will we know the mines aren't going to be there? And nuclear proliferation, the thing that bothers me is that whether the Obama agreement that was made at that point in time, I think it was Obama,
it was.
And which was in place, has been ripped up by Trump. And my concern is, why would, even if you had an agreement with Iran, why would they believe our country if they made an agreement that Trump's the president? He might rip that agreement up as well. We have 2 minutes left, and those are going to be your 2 minutes.
Okay.
Do you disagree? I mean, you may disagree with me, but they're rational questions.
They're rational questions. The first point about the ICBM capacity. Believe me, Israel knows exactly where they are manufactured and where the launchers are, and they have technology capabilities that we can't imagine, really.
You and me, we or Israel?
You and me and most Israelis and most people. It's incredible. When they took out certain...
Well, if they know so much, how did October 7th happen? If Israel's so great...
It was a huge failure, but you promised me
that's right.
that I would be able to respond to what you're saying now.
You are correct,
Okay.
Attorney Reich.
So that's one point. About the naval issue, I don't know, and neither do you, and neither do most people, about what's really happening. But again, Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, is beyond anything that we can imagine. And the third point, the nuclear proliferation, believe me, we know. Believe me, there has been intelligence.
That's got to happen.
The Mossad is beyond the imagining
Mossad, for
of
those who
anyone.
don't know?
The Israeli CIA.
CIA. Look, this has been a wonderful discussion. We've had 5 shows at least, I think.
5.
5 shows, and we always say at the end, we don't have enough time. But the bottom line answer is that all the time we share is good time. And we may disagree on things, but there's 2 things we don't disagree upon. Number 1 is we love Israel. We wish Israel had better leadership. We wish the United States had better leadership. And I adore you. And I respect you 100%. And thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Truly my pleasure. I obviously love talking about it. And the reason I do it is if I can convince one person about things that are more realistic than you see on Wikipedia or the internet, I've done my job.
Plus, you maybe do some homework for today's show. Thank you, Veronica Reich. I hope you go back to Israel when it's safe for you. This has been Babel Potzner on The Bobby O Show. God bless America. Shalom, which means hello, goodbye, and peace.